Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with another knitting podcast. I'm super excited for this video. I have quite a few finished objects and also a lot of works in progress that you have not seen here yet. Besides YouTube, you can also find me on Instagram at Mipi the Label. I also recently started a Patreon that will also be linked down below, and you can watch my videos there ad-free and also have a lot of other fun benefits if you're interested. And before I forget, I will mention what I'm wearing because I usually get 1 or 2 questions about it. So this is the Stripe Hype sweater by Katia. I knit this mainly in drops Lima, which is the cream yarn, and then the other yarns are just a variety, and I will probably link my Ravelry page down below of the project so you can see all of the yarns that I use, because I think I listed it there. And then my accessory is my Mila mini shawl, which is my own pattern. I think this was my second knitting pattern that I ever released, and it's just a really nice shawl with a bunch of lace, bobbles and cables, which is my usual go-to for knitting patterns because I love a lot of texture and I think it's a lot of fun to knit. So that is what I'm wearing today. And for some reason it is really cold. I don't know why. It's almost the temperature that I feel like I should turn on the heating, but I'm not going to just yet. And it is the end of September, so who knows. I think it is officially fall right now. So yeah, let's just get started with my first finished objects. So my first finished object is the sweater that was a work in progress in my last knitting podcast. And this is the Holly Harvest sweater. This is currently being test knitted. It is my own design, so it's a circular colorwork yoke with mostly floral motifs and also a little bit Christmas inspired. So it will be released, I think, in December or something. I'm not sure what I planned at the date, but I will put it on the screen because I'm just super forgetful. But it's a gorgeous sweater and I really love it. I also did some increases in the sleeve to create a really beautiful bishop sleeve, and then added some color work at the cuff, which I really love. This one also has short rows in the back to create this like natural neckline shaping, and this neckline is 3x1 ribbing with a picot edge that I had to play around with a lot to create this, because usually a picot edge, as far as I've seen it online, is with 1x1 ribbing, and I wanted to do something with 2x2 ribbing or 3x1 ribbing, like just a chunkier rib than 1x1. So I had to do a lot of playing around with that, and I managed, luckily. So then I also have all of the other like ribbing in the sweater with 3x1 ribbing, as well as the hem, which is a split hem, which I think is very fun. I absolutely adore this sweater. All of this yarn is drops Lima, which I really like. It's super affordable for me to make a knitting sample with that, and also for test knitters. I know some test knitters chose other yarns, but also people that want to exactly replicate the sweater are able to, because most people can afford drops yarn, and I think the quality is really nice and I just really love it. And I did make a mistake somewhere because one sleeve is longer than the other, and then I also have a colorwork row missing in one of my sleeves. But it's this row with the brown that is not in this sleeve, and I thought about going back and redoing it, but I didn't. And I'm probably gonna keep it like this. So sorry, not sorry. It is in a pattern like that with the brown, because I do think that just adds a little bit of something there. And yeah, I love it. That's all that I can say. All of my knitting patterns always come in 10 sizes, ranging from an extra extra small to a 5XL. For some reason, some of my test knitters have dropped out. Usually that doesn't really happen, but with this test knit, I've actually already had 3 people that applied, and then I chose them, and then 1 or 2 weeks later, or now 3 weeks later, they are slowly dropping out, which is kind of a bummer. Also, especially because I just feel like it's a little bit too late to start adding other people. So just a reminder, if you're also doing test knits, to always have backups for people. So don't just choose one person per size, because then you will not have any people left if people drop out. That is my little tip for you. So that is my first finished object. It is also the only garment that I've managed to finish this past span of 3 weeks. But I do have 2 little accessories that are really fun. The first one is a hat that is my own design, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. I feel like when you stretch it out, it looks a lot better. I did wet block this one, but it looks like this. It's currently unnamed, so I don't even know what to call it right now. But like here you can see, if I stretch it out, I feel like the stitches become a lot more clear, and this is how it looks on the crown, because I do really like how that looks actually. So I'm still undecided if I want to release this as a design or not. Some people have said that it's ugly and that I should forget about it, but other people have liked it. So I don't know. Maybe it's also like imposter syndrome or something, but I just feel like maybe this design is not it. It could also be the yarn, that it's too fluffy for some reason. The yarn is Long Yarn's Alpaca Superlight, held together with Long Yarn's Merino, I think the fingering weight yarn. Because that yarn comes in multiple different weights, so I will put on the screen or in the description what I used exactly, as well as like the colors. But I do like it, I'm just not entirely sure. And I also did my first like real tubular cast on for this, which was a lot of fun to learn. And there were a lot of rows where you had to just like knit it without joining it around, which I thought was super interesting. But it did create a really beautiful, like, seamless cast on edge, which I really like. So it is folded, so there's quite a lot of ribbing here, but I blocked it to be folded like this, so it stays quite nicely like that. So yeah, I like it, but I also don't like it for some reason. Then my next finished object is the Fiona flower headband. This is just a little fun pattern that I'm going to be releasing on my Patreon. So for people that follow me on Patreon with a paid membership, they will get this pattern for free. And other people can find it on Ravelry for a smaller price than my usual knitting patterns. So it just looks like this. It's a lace and cable stitch pattern that I then embroidered with some flowers. This would be the right way up actually. So here you can kind of see the little embroidery that I did. I'm not very good at embroidery, but I do think they look decent enough to work. And this is just a really fun, quick little accessory that you can make with only one ball of yarn, which is always really nice. So this one is knit with Drops Daisy. I didn't even use an entire ball of yarn. I didn't weigh it, I think, but maybe like half or something like that. Then it's gonna come in 3 different sizes. This is probably one of the smallest sizes because I have a really small head for some reason. And I just think it's very cute and very nice. And speaking of the Fiona pattern, sorry I dropped it. But I have currently cast on 2 projects that feature the same cable lace motif. And they're also going to have like floral embroidery on top. So I might as well jump into those now. So the first one is going to be a cardigan design. This one is called the Fiona Flower Cardigan. They're all just going to be called like that. So Fiona Flower something. It's going to be a little bit of a collection. But they all kind of stand on their own, I feel like. So they use the same cable lace motif. But other than that, they don't have a lot of similarities. And I also didn't use the exact same yarn. So this one, as you can see, is very different. This one is knit with Drops Alpaca held together with Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk, both in the color Almond. And I've actually made a design with this yarn before, but that design was never fully finished. So it's frog basically. So maybe you would be able to recognize it because I have been playing around with this idea for a longer time. And this is going to be a drop shoulder cardigan with short row shaping. And so far I really like it. It has that Fiona flower cable on the back, so this is going to have some embroidery. Then some seed stitch, a cable right there, and a lot of lace, which I think is very cute. And the shoulder shaping is super subtle, like it's very like difficult to tell, but here you can see that it kind of angles a little bit, but definitely not something like major like this or something. And I'm having a lot of fun with this design, but I have not knit on this probably in a week or something, because I started another Fiona flower design. It's going to have a round neck, probably straight regular sleeves, double knitted at the front, and it's just going to be quite simple. And especially the yarn is just really beautiful, I think. The Drops Alpaca with the Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk is a beautiful yarn combination that I will definitely use again. It is quite fluffy, also very drapey, so if that's something that you're looking for, I would definitely recommend this. And I also am using the Knit Pro swivel cables, the one that have a 360 like turn ratio, and they are super duper nice. Then my next design that I have in the Fiona flower range is actually a collar. And I've never designed or knit a collar before, but it's a really nice little quick knitting thing to make, or like a knitting project, I mean. And I think it's also a really nice accessory, especially when it starts to really cool down. I think this will be really nice to wear. This is going to be like a one size fits all kind of thing. Maybe I'm going to add sizes, but I have not entirely decided upon that. I have this so far. So this is what the back looks like, how I started this one. So this one has a different construction because this one has a European drop shoulder, is how this is called when it kind of has that line going on there. Then again, we have that Fiona flower cable in the center back with, again, other cables, lace, and some like garter stitch detail there. Then it goes like that into the edge, which I really like, and then an I-cord at the bottom. And then I picked up stitches for the front and started those. And I actually did not chart this before I started knitting it, which usually I do. So they are both at a different point right now. So I should have charted it and then knit it, but I was doing other things. So I was reading a book and watching TV and stuff like that. So currently, when you really look at those fronts very closely, you can see that here there's not a cable inside, and then here there is a cable. So I messed up somewhere and I need to find out where. So one of these sides is going to have to be frogged, which is sad, but you know, that stuff happens. It's part of the process. And this one is going to have a really fun detail. So it's going to have a little bit of a split neck at the front and like a big collar. So it's going to have like a kind of a Henley style in the front, which I thought would be really nice and like adjustable for a lot of people regarding sizes. So it's not necessarily like one head size that can fit through. And I think that's a really good idea. So I like this one so far. And I'm actually knitting that one with a really nice new yarn from Katia. This one is called Concept by Katia Essential Alpaca. And it's 70% alpaca and 30% wool. 50 grams for 80 meters. And it looks like this. So I think this is a new yarn of theirs for their fall winter collection. And I saw this in the store and I just really liked the color and the feel of it. If you use a lot of white and beige yarns, you know that there are a lot of like different colors of beige and white. But for some reason this one is just a beautiful like creamy white that looks a little bit like snow. I feel like the Drops Lima, for example, is a lot more yellowish compared to this one. So this one is a lot more white, but it's still a very warm white. So it's really beautiful and I would really recommend this one. It is quite expensive, I think, but it is quite nice as well. Then my next knitting project is a really boring scarf. This is the Berlin scarf by Paula Strickt, I believe is the designer. And yeah, I'm saying boring because it's stockinette in a round and that doesn't really excite me at all. So I have not knit on this since I cast it on. So I cast it on, knit this amount and then I did not touch it anymore. And this yarn is also a yarn that I used before and that I'm frogging something with. I made a cardigan design with that is not working sadly. So I'm using the yarn for something else because I felt like it was going to waste. This is also a yarn by Katia and this one is called the Komorebi. This one is 50% wool, then cotton and polyamide and mohair. So it is a very interesting yarn composition, I feel like. And it's 50 grams for 100 meters. And as you may have been able to tell, it's a blue clay yarn. So it is very pretty, but it's a pain to knit with. And I think that's also why I just have not really touched it, because it's blue clay in a round. And that doesn't sound very fun, right? It really doesn't. But I do know that the finished object is something that I'm gonna get a lot of wear out of. And I do really like the color. It's definitely something that I would buy like ready to wear in store. Just a boucle scarf with like fringes on the edge. Very nice. This is also knit on 7mm needles, so it should go by quite quickly. I'm now noticing that I didn't mention the other needle sizes, but I will also put the needle size on the screen somewhere. But the cardigan and the collar, both the Fiona patterns, were knit on 4.5mm needles. So this 7mm needle is very big for me. But yeah, I will finish it one day, but it's kind of on the back burner and not a priority at all at the moment. Then I actually have another work in progress that is really not a priority at all, which is my Sweetshop blanket. The last time you saw it was not in my last knitting podcast, but the one before that, I think, because I'm only showing this when I have something new to show you, or else it would be kind of boring. I think the last time I had like a square of 9. And since then I've added 2 squares. So I have this. It's already becoming very hard to show you. I don't know how I'm gonna manage that when it really becomes very big. But this is what I had first, I think. And these are my new squares. So we have a very bright pink one, which is a Drops Daisy yarn. And then this is just a hand-dyed sock yarn from Gazal, I think, which is a Turkish yarn brand. My main color is also the Drops Lima, the same one that I'm wearing in my sweater. It's just a really nice basic yarn. And I love this knitting project. It's just something that I don't work on every day, not even every week. Just sometimes I work on it. And when I do work on it, I work on it a lot. Then there's one knitting project that I would actually love to cast on very soon. I think I will when I finish one of my other knitting projects. This is not going to be my own design, which is nice for a change. And it's going to be knit with the Concept by Katia Cotton Merino, which I was kindly gifted. I originally got this yarn, like gifted by them, to make a Tallulah texture cardigan sample, but the Tallulah texture cardigan test knit is going along quite nicely, and I just don't really feel like knitting that pattern again. Like, it just really seems very daunting and I don't want to do it. I would just much rather knit something that I've never knit before or start a new design. Just knitting something twice is not really my go-to. So I don't think that's going to happen, but I do really want to use the yarn because it was gifted to me and I also love the yarn and the color. But then I saw that Hobbii recently released a new yarn as well as patterns for those yarns. And it's very similar to the Katia Concept Cotton Merino. It's also the same composition, I think. So like 70% cotton, 30% wool. And also the same yardage, 50 grams for 105 meters, I believe. And it's in collaboration with PomPom, which is really fun. So they have a shawl that is called the Muse shawl. It's a free pattern for a triangular shawl, quite big, like much bigger than the one that I'm wearing right now. And I just love the little motif that is in there. I'm not sure if it's cabled, but I think it is. And then with the bubbles and twisted stitches, I think it's gorgeous. And it's a free pattern, and that is always very nice. And I think it's going to look really beautiful in this yarn. So the yarn that is new is called Garlands. And now I'm checking that yarn, and there is a slight difference. So theirs is 70% cotton, 30% alpaca. And this one has 30% wool instead of alpaca. So that really is the only difference. So I think this is going to make a very beautiful shawl, and maybe I can even make a little matching hat for it. That would be really nice, or mittens. And I want to cast on that very soon. So that is my only knitting project that I'm kind of thinking about really starting very soon. I do have other things you may have seen in my fall knitting plans video, but I just have too many other things going on right now, and also designs that eventually I will have to knit. So I feel like just having one in mind is good enough. So those were all of my knitting, finished objects and whips, and then I also have one sewing finished object and one sewing work in progress. So let me get started with the finished object. So this is a pattern test that I'm currently doing for Katia Komorebi, and it's called the Daily Dress. It's a very beautiful dress with lace up in the back that I still have yet to insert because the first attempt that I did, my ties were too short, but it has these beautiful pleats in the front. There's also a version with gathers, but I chose the pleats for some reason. And it also kind of hides the pockets that are in the side seams, which I really like. And then it has a beautiful princess seam in the front. And then I opted to add some like lace and ribbon around the neckline as well as around the sleeves. And it has a really beautiful little capped puff sleeve as well. It's beautiful, I think. I made this with a thrifted cotton fabric. So really it's not anything special. It's just 100% cotton poplin, I think. And I made a mini length version. So the actual pattern is like for a long dress, but I wanted it to be a mini length. And I think this is a really cute dress for the fall winter. Maybe with like a little scarf to keep my neck warm, and a little cardigan would be very cute. That's also why I decided to make it in this color, because I just feel like it's very fall and winter appropriate. Also maybe for the holidays this would be very cute. I made the size 1, which is the second to smallest size, and it fits me quite well. And Katia Komorebi is very size inclusive, so there are a lot of sizes. And she also explains very well in the pattern how to adjust it for your size to make it really fit you properly, or like how to do the bust adjustments, for example, for people with a bigger or a smaller chest, which I really appreciate. So I am going to make a second version of that dress, but I don't know when that's going to happen because I have another sewing project going on right now. And it's a quilt, my first ever quilt that's going to be. And for some reason I also don't really feel like making garments anymore right now. And I think it's because in the summer I just made a lot of new garments for my summer wardrobe because things weren't really fitting well or I didn't like them anymore. So like I said, I'm making my first ever quilt, and I'm using a pattern. I'm using a pattern by the Midlife Quilter, I believe is her name. And the pattern that I'm using is called the Headband quilt pattern. And this one has scrappy sawtooth stars and Irish chain blocks, it says. And it's for an advanced beginner that uses a mix of half squares, triangles and 4 patch blocks. So I will show you what I have so far. I've made 1 star so far. Actually in her sample she did the stars all the same, and in the instructions she says to do them all different. But I think I'm also going to do them all the same. For some reason that just feels right to me, so that's what I'm going to do. So this is the first square that I made, or the star, whatever. Like the little block is what I'm referring to. And I really like how it looks, and I'm quite proud of it. So I'm going to have 15 of these because I'm making the largest size. So it's going to be quite big, and I'm really happy with that. I used a mixture of fabrics. Some of them are Ruby Star Society, and then a lot of them are also from the fabric store that I work at, or thrifted fabrics. So the only ones that you can buy, I think, are this one, as well as this one underneath, because I think both of those are from Ruby Star Society, and I got them from a quilt shop, which is very lovely. And it's going to take a very long time for me to be able to actually finish that quilt, but I'm not in a rush, and like I said, I kind of feel like focusing on the quilt right now and not really sewing any garments. So I also have picked out my backing fabric. So the main fabric is going to be white, like the sample that she has. And then my back is going to be a beautiful gingham fabric, which I really love. And I think I'm also going to do my binding in this fabric, but it's currently also undecided. And I think this is going to be just very pretty. I really like all of the little combination that I did, because this is a combination of basically all of my favorite colors at the moment. So those were all of the finished objects and works in progress that I have for sewing. And then I also have a couple of books that I finished. So I'm just going to grab my list of the books that I've finished. I've read 4 books so far. Well, like since my last knitting podcast. At the moment I'm actually reading ACOTAR. I'm at the 3rd book right now, and for some reason it has like a hold on me and on my life. It's very unhealthy, it feels like. But I feel like I'm entranced by the book and I just cannot stop reading. And it has made me feel a little bit sad and angry that my life is not like ACOTAR, which I know it's not how life is supposed to be because there's a war going on. But it's just all of the magic that is going on is just so beautiful and fun, and I feel like life as we know it is kind of boring because we don't have magic, and it's making me feel really angry for some reason. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself because I read 2 books before I started ACOTAR. So first I actually read Windsong, which was a book kind of inspired by also Beauty and the Beast, which ACOTAR is also inspired by. And it was really fun, but it was also the most gruesome book that I've ever read. So some points were just really disgusting and really vulgar almost, and very bloody, and yeah, it almost made me feel a little bit sick, to be honest. But I do think that story was really fun. It maybe was very inspired by A Court of Thorns and Roses, but I'm not entirely sure. But I do also know that there's a Norwegian fantasy, or like something about the moon. I always forget what it's called, but I will put it on the screen. And I know that the Windsong is inspired by that. But also A Court of Thorns and Roses is also inspired by that. So that is probably why there are similarities in the book. But I do think it was a really fun book. I don't remember if I rated it 4 or 5 stars, but it was high up on my rating. And then after that I read Done and Dusted, which was a complete different book. It was just a little cowboy romance in a small town. Very fun, very easy to read and quick. And I think I rated it also like 3 or 4 stars, just a nice little book. But then, for some reason, I went and started A Court of Thorns and Roses, because I know there's a really big hype around that book, and Sarah J. Maas is a very well-known author because of ACOTAR, and I just started it, and I didn't really expect anything from it, and I think the first book was really fun, and I definitely felt very excited to keep reading it, and so I did. And I think I rated the first book with like 4 stars or something, but then I read the second book, and that's kind of where it all went wrong, because the second book was probably the best book that I've ever read in my entire life so far, and I did write in my review that I don't know what that says about me or my reading taste, but it was the best book that I've ever read, and I could not stop reading it, stop thinking about it. It just had a hold on me and on my life. And I have started the 3rd book now, and it also has a hold on me, luckily a little bit less than the 2nd book, but I just feel like such dread because I know I'm gonna be so sad when I finished reading these books, and it already makes me, I don't know, emotional to think about right now. Which I know is so stupid because it's only a book, but for some reason I'm just someone that can really imagine the entire world, and I feel like I know these people, like just like when you watch a show, that it has a hold on you and it's like your own life, and then after it's finished you still have so many questions about what they're doing and how their life is going, even though it's not real. And I have that like but times 10, and it's incredibly annoying. So actually I'm thinking that after I finish the 3rd book of ACOTAR, which is A Court of Wings and Ruin, I think is how it's called. And I think after I finish that book, I'm gonna take a break. And actually sometimes my heart is like beating out of my chest, like so hard, because I'm so, like, I don't know. It's just doing things to me that are not good for me. So I guess also a life update that this book has sent me on some kind of mental spiral, which is really fun. And yeah, not what I wanted when I started reading this series. But yeah, just so you know that you can expect to be changed by that book. And people have said it, but I didn't really believe them. So you don't really know that unless you start to read it for yourself. So those were all of the books that I've read, all of my knits and all of my sewing projects. And I don't really have anything to update you as far as knit and chat go. Or maybe I do, but I don't really feel like that at the moment. So I'm gonna do that for my next video. But as always, if you do have any questions for me for your knit and chat, then definitely leave them below and I will answer them in my next knitting podcast. And yeah, I am doing well, so don't get alarmed. But I just don't feel like talking right now. I just feel like going back to my book, to be very honest. And I am going to try to knit at the same time so that I don't get too entranced by the book. And I'm almost done, so that is nice. So the end is in sight. I really hope that you enjoyed this knitting podcast and catching up with me. For now, I wish you all a very happy day, happy knitting, and I hope to see you on my next video. Bye bye!